Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jet airliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin yang, come along.
Welcome aboard to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday, brought to you by the great folks at Any More Honda. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin shooting back from a glorious vacation. We've got Chris Denari coming on today, Matt Taylor as well. Plenty to get to and talk about. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I just got back from that Florida sunshine, playing a little golf. So I'm ready. I'm good to go, man. I'm ready. I'm dialed in for today's show.
Oh, it's good to hear, man. Looking forward to it. Chris Denari will be with us, and not to take a little sad trip, but we'll talk to him about Bob Slick Leonard some more, of course, because he had the opportunity to work with him so much, and his dad, they were so close. He's the greatest Hoosier, man. I'm really he's just the greatest basketball Hoosier of all time. And I'm not talking about IU. I'm talking about the state.
Right.
But yeah, we'll talk about more about that. Indiana has got its coaching staff lined out. The pieces are in place. Everybody's got their new position. We'll go over that. Now they just got to fill out the roster. Jennifer hit us up on the Any More Honda hotline. You can do the same, whether you're on YouTube or on the text line. A lot of people love and follow us on the YouTube, so you can do that as well if you'd like to do that. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, just go sign up there. And Yasir Rosemond. Tim said he's not so happy about it. Well, why? That's the third one, the third hire, the coach number 3. Probably brought in for recruiting purposes. His experience is a different part of the country down in your area, down in the southern part, more experience down there. Georgia, Alabama. He was on Avery Johnson. Oh my God, I haven't busted out the Avery Johnson in a long time. Long time. He was on Avery Johnson's staff at Alabama last. I don't know what he's been doing in between. I haven't looked back to that, but they brought him in, so there must be a reason. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good hire. He spent time. There's a lot of good basketball here in Georgia, especially the Atlanta area. So you can pick up some of those kids. I know you've talked about at times Indiana under Archie Miller struggled to recruit outside the state and bring in some of those top tier players. And he's a guy that's got. I think he's had experience at Alabama, Georgia, Oregon. And I think Samford or Stanford, one of those two schools, I can't remember off the top of my head. But so he's a guy that brings plenty of experience, I think around 10, 15 years. Then when you pair that with Dane Fife and keeping Kenya Hunter on staff, I think it's a really good assistant pool. I mean, you can't have – well, you could, but I don't know that it's the best fit to have 3 Indiana guys on that staff. You want a little diversity on that staff. You want people who have experience in other parts of the country. And while everybody would have liked to see Michael Lewis on that staff, I don't think he would have been in a position where it would have been a promotion to come to Indiana at that point. So I think it's a good staff. And the way I look at it, Jim, is they couldn't have been any worse. You know, you get a good head coach. You got what everybody thinks is going to be the replacement in Dane Fife, and then you get a good recruiter in Kenya Hunter, and we'll see what Yasir brings to the staff. I think it's a fine hire.
It is certainly a staff that is robust because you've got a lot of moving parts. Mike Roberts, the former third assistant coach, now moved to an assistant AD role under Thad Matta. They created that role. That'd be probably a great gig just to hang on to if I were him. Seriously, he's making good money. He's got working for the university. You got great benefits. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm in. He's from Terre Haute. Man, that's a lifer job. They moved Bill Walsh from the Debo, director of basketball operations, to head of recruiting. And the Sander guy, I've got to look him up, that is now the Debo director of basketball operations. Not familiar with who that is. We'll have to pull that up. But there's the moving parts that have happened that was going on. So let's see. Big Ten Tyler Bust. There you go. Well, we're getting excited already.
There you go.
There we go. So you're putting the pressure on them already. But yeah, we'll see how we go as we go to the summer now, because they've got roster management to take care of now. 2 open scholarships. I don't think they fill both those scholarships personally. We have to see this, and the COVID has really, you get COVID and the portal hitting at the same time.
Yes.
That is unbelievably a convergence of a lot of different things, because you got these freshmen that are coming out of high school that have not been able to go on recruiting visits, that not have been able to be seen. You've got all these players that are now available in the portal that don't have to go anywhere, that have been seen, that have been trained. It is going to create a ripple effect that I think is felt all the way down. And a lot of these kids that were probably getting scholarships maybe to places they may not have gotten to before are not going to get those scholarships now. They're going to get some lesser scholarships. Then do they develop there or not? Man, this could change recruit everything. The change that's coming, we keep talking about with name, image, likeness, and all these different things. Here's another completely different change that starts today and may not ever come back in a different direction.
Yeah, and I think we're over 1,200, 1,300 basketball players that are in the transfer portal, or some ridiculous number like that. And to an extent, you understand, because this was a year when players couldn't go home and see their families. So if you have a player who's playing at Indiana and his family, I'm just throwing out, his family's in California, he might decide to go a little bit closer to home, especially if it's a young kid, if it's a freshman or even a sophomore. So I understand from that perspective. What's going to be interesting is this one-time transfer rule. If that's probably going to pass, and it's going to pass this week, is this going to be an annual thing? Or is it eventually going to be a thing where it kind of wears off, where you see more of these players who, because I know on the football side, I can't speak to basketball, but on the football side, only a small percentage of those kids that transfer out of a Power 5 program transfer to another Power 5 program. They usually go to the Group of 5, Division 2, or the FCS. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, I don't know if that's what their expectation was when they hit the transfer portal. So I think over time, if you see players are not getting maybe the calls that they had hoped for, you might see that kind of slow down. But it's new, it's interesting, and it kind of comes at a like you said, it's kind of this perfect storm, because with COVID and the homesickness and not being able to see your family and not being able to go on recruiting visits, I mean, that's big. Somebody might get to Indiana and say, this isn't what I expected. I'm out. I'm going back to some place somewhere in Tennessee or whatever the case might be. So, it's a perfect storm. It's interesting. I'm more interested in the long-term effects to see what happens 3 or 4 years down the road. Will we continually see 1,200 players, or is it going to taper off? Is this a one-time thing because of COVID and all the unique circumstances these kids had to face?
Well, that's the one thing I've said. This is like everything. It's that new thing, the new shiny toy. But now this is a valuable toy. It's not going away in any.
Right.
I agree. I don't think it's going to be 1,200 most of the time. I think we're going to have this big surge, and then you get back some normalcy. But it's not going back. I mean, and I don't disagree with this. They should be allowed to do this once. I don't have a problem with it. The game is the athletics. By the game, I'm talking about the game of college athletics. The game has changed. The money has changed. It's not the same. It's just a different game, man.
The one thing I've heard some coaches, this is not the case every time, because you hear some coaches that'll say, we had this conversation. It's in his best interest or her best interest to transfer. So I get that. What concerns me is if players don't have that conversation, because there's some coaches who have said we felt blindsided by this. And I don't know that that's always the best move. I agree with you. I think they should have that flexibility, especially in situations where a coach might leave or something big happens to the program, or, something along those lines. But I would like to, you can't really implement this, but I would like to see some sort of conversation being had, as opposed to a player just entering their name in the transfer portal. I'd like to see some sort of conversation and say, why are you transferring? Is it simply playing time? Is it is something going on with your family? Whatever the case might be, just have that conversation, because we all have those impulses, right? We all have that knee-jerk reaction. And if you may be on a path to play 25, 30 minutes a game at Purdue or Indiana, and then, you decide that you're going to transfer because you only played 5 minutes per game at that school, and there might be bigger plans in place, and you might make the wrong decision. So I just would like to see some sort of conversation, but the NCAA and these schools, there's really no way to implement that.
Nope. And again, what happens is the NCAA lets this stuff go on so long before they ever do anything about it.
Yep.
And they're doing the same thing has happened with name, image, likeness, and all that stuff. They fight and fight and fight until it becomes such a big snowball that it rolls right the hell over them because they're so stupid. Mark Emmert you can't say he's dumb because he's been in a position making all that money doing nothing and being a clown for all these years. That's a great gig if you can get it. But I'm serious. It's mind-boggling. But they have fought and fought and fought. Oh, just look what they just did, refusing to meet with the players before the Final Four. I mean, that's another, and he just doesn't care. But Mark Emmert, I'm speaking of, the head of the NCAA, just doesn't care, and it's a complete lack of acknowledgement to them, to these players, and it's a slap in the face. But I don't know how he stays in place. But
and let me just say this too: I don't think you had to get to this point where you had to allow players. I mean, again, I think there should have been some rule in the first place where if a coach leaves or whatever, those players can transfer out and without penalty, because that's a different, unique situation. But if the NCAA would have, in the first place, just been transparent in explaining why Justin Fields gets to play immediately at Ohio State after transferring from Georgia, and Luke Ford, the tight end from Georgia, transfers to Illinois, he doesn't get to play right away, despite there was a family illness, and that's the reason he transferred back. There was no transparency. It was just like, yep, Justin Fields gets to play. Nope, we're going to stamp Luke Ford. He doesn't get to play. If you would have just been transparent and said, this is what you have to do, and you would have followed those guidelines for those immediate eligibility waivers, I don't think you would even have to do this, because then everybody understands what the process is. But the fact that you lacked transparency, there was no clear process, and you appeared to show favoritism to big-time school quarterbacks. That's what kind of snowballed this into this one-time transfer thing, and that's why you're seeing so many players in college football and college basketball. That's part of the problem. So this could have been resolved very easily 5 or 10 years, probably even longer ago, but they took their sweet time and ignored what student athletes and coaches requested, and now you have this situation.
It's much like the IHSAA, the Indiana High School Athletic Association, and how they have dealt with transfers. Recently, a judge up here just basically ripped them to shreds, being just everything, horrible in how they have handled those over the years, which everybody knew that, but they've gotten away with it. Like the NCAA gets away with it. It's the same thing. They're supposed to be organizations that are there for the benefit of the student athletes. No. And if you'd see some of these transcripts, what goes on in those transfers, but some of those, the lawyers, how they acted, it's abysmal. But hey, we got plenty more coming up. Chris Denari's on the show from the Pacers, Matt Taylor. We get caught up on the Colts, and there's more to talk about, of course, with Indiana. What's going to go on next, roster spots, and all that. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. We're back with more right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or yay. Hey, yay, 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 yay.
Matt messaged me. He's good to come on here in the next couple minutes.
Where's Benny Sander? Who is Benny Sander? I meant to look that up yesterday. Benny Sander.
I saw that yesterday. I didn't look.
Not Bernie Sanders, god dang it.
I was going to say, I thought it said Barry Sanders.
Oh, that would be great.
Or Benny Seltzer.
Benny Seltzer.
Whatever happened to him?
Who's Benny
Wasn't
Seltzer?
He was
a coach somewhere?
Crean. I don't know where he went, but I know he left Crean to head coach, and I don't know what happened to him after that. He may still be coaching.
Damn it.
I'd never heard of him.
He was one of his early assistants.
That's probably why. Before I was in the biz.
The biz.
Dustin?
As
What's
they
that?
say.
How old are you, Dustin?
Almost 33.
Oh shoot, I'm 23. I thought you were closer to my age.
Nope, I'm getting up there.
Oh, he moved up from Benny Sander just moved up from the recruitment analyst into the director of basketball operations. Welsh moved from operations back. So I think he got demoted, but they kept him here is what they did. He's an Archie guy.
I'm sure he gets paid pretty handsomely.
Yeah. Hey, any of those university jobs are grand.
And especially those where you don't, I mean.
It's like a government job, man.
I know. It's not like they have to produce the results. I mean, they kind of do with the recruiting and stuff, but you're not the one going into the house. You're not the one on the sidelines during the game. It's like quality control analysts in football.
Extraordinary destination,
Oh,
French Lick, West Baden, Indiana. You'll find great places to visit, to stay, to dine, and to play. We offer an up-close animal encounter with elephants and giraffes.
Visit.
Lodging that is out of this world.
You're good
World-class
until I
golfing.
play the Reynolds
And a
segment.
premier resort experience that is
Yeah, always
waiting
give
for
us-
you
yeah,
on your
tell us
next
first.
visit
That's
to
always-
French
We're
Lick,
coming,
West
so
Baden.
stop now.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sillersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Schutte as well from Saturday Tradition. Visits are back. Matt Taylor's joining us from the Colts. I think he's with us now. We're going to talk about that in a minute, too. We'll talk about that. Well, with Matt joining us, it's perfect timing. Matt, how are you, brother?
Hey, I'm good.
Coming in loud and clear. So just remembered from yesterday, the visits are back. College athletes, which I know that's not your all's business, but it's important for development and all that because, man, it's just a ripple effect. We were just talking about the recruiting aspect, how this ripple effect of COVID has shoved everything back all the way down to freshmen. And I'm sure that'll be caught up by the time it gets to the pro level. But this is a ripple effect that goes all the way back. That's probably going to be a couple of years.
Are you talking about NFL visits, prospect visits with NFL teams this time of year? Is that what you're getting at?
No, actually, college visits are back, but I'm just actually the whole ripple effect. So you think about a NASCAR start when they first start the race, and if the very front car checks up, how that causes that accordion effect back. Now we've got this recruiting where the college seniors can stay a year longer, which puts them a year behind going forward to if they want to move forward. But also these guys that are going to be freshmen, they're being over recruited because they didn't get to go on visits, and it's created a mess in sports in that regard.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the wild, wild west right now. I mean, you guys are following it certainly a lot more closely than I am with the transfer portal and extra years of eligibility being granted now and guys coming and going. And certainly with the situation down at IU with a new coaching staff and players putting their names out there and then coming back and then coaches being retained. Everybody's trying to kind of feel their way through this transition period. Certainly there's a lot of optimism right now within the program, but it is exciting. And the rules sort of, if I'm reading it right, and if I have the right feeling about it accurately, it's set up to where a team like Indiana that had such a poor season last year, certainly down the stretch, can bounce back easier. And it's sort of like the NFL where there's so much parity. You know, we see it in that league so often where at least 4 teams since 1990 have made the playoffs one year that didn't the year before. So you can go from worst to first pretty quickly. I mean, we see it all the time where a team goes, 4-12. The next year they go 11-5 and win the division. having finished, second to last or dead last in their division the year before. So not saying that's going to happen with Indiana, because I think, the Big Ten is going to be pretty good again next season, regardless of all of the major pieces, exiting the conference this offseason. But I think there's a chance for IU to bounce back pretty significantly from one year to the next.
Matt,
I agree.
Matt, we're just a few weeks away here from the football's premier offseason event. And one of the biggest talking points has been Justin Fields. Some people think he's the number 2 quarterback in the draft. Some people are saying he's, number 5. And it is interesting to me, having followed him throughout the last 2 seasons, he's a guy who can make every throw. He can take off. He's a talented kid. He puts in the work. He had a Heisman finalist season, in 2019. And then bounces back and has even better numbers in 2020, but he's continually been knocked. And I'm curious, Lamar Jackson is a quarterback who comes to mind, but I'm trying to think, has there been a quarterback in your mind, because you probably followed a little bit more closely, who's been as criticized and as, I would say, unfairly critiqued as Justin Fields in recent memory?
Yeah, the guy that immediately comes to mind as far as that is Geno Smith. And we're going back a while, although I think Justin Fields' case is not as severe, if you will, as Geno Smith's. Geno, it was so awkward. I forget what year that was, but he was sitting in the green room at the draft, and every single pick off the board, they would just focus. They would have that shot of him just, kind of sitting by himself and bewilderment as to why he was still on the board. I think he was a high second round pick by the Jets. Certainly don't think that's going to happen with Justin Fields. That's how deep this quarterback draft class is. I think he's still going to be a top 10 pick. But no, you're exactly right. I mean, going into the college football season, the general sentiment was Trevor Lawrence was number 1. But based off what we were seeing from Justin Fields, especially early on in the Big Ten schedule last year, there was a slight debate. Well, hey, should Fields be that first overall pick? Should Fields go number 1 overall? But then as the season progressed, and he had a bad game against IU, threw a couple of interceptions. Down the stretch of the Big Ten. But I tell you what, I thought he bounced back in a big way in the college football playoff. I think that, for me, kind of solidified him being a top 10 selection, top 5, in my opinion. But no, it's funny because you look at, again, going back to last season, going into the college football season, I didn't know who the heck Zach Wilson was, because he plays on the West Coast and it's BYU, and they don't play a major schedule, and not to the extent that Justin Fields does at Ohio State. I didn't know who the heck Trey Lance was, especially. I mean, the guy's, when you look at his resume, he's only played 17 games in his college career, and it's at the FCS level. But again, people are saying Trey Lance should be taken higher than Justin Fields. And maybe the biggest one is Mac Jones. Again, going to the draft process at the end of the season, Mac Jones was a kind of a tier 1, tier 2 guy, maybe drafted on the second day. Now it appears that he's going to go 3rd overall to the San Francisco 49ers, and people are saying, what the heck happened to Justin Fields? So I don't think it's anything specific. I don't think it's just one thing that you can kind of focus on. But, to me, I think the stigma on Mac Jones, this is kind of childish, but it goes back, for me anyways, that picture of him, that social media picture of him with his shirt off at the end of the national championship game, right? I mean, he looks like my neighbor, right? He's not chiseled. He doesn't look like an NFL gladiator. But to be fair, that there's that notorious picture of Tom Brady at the combine sitting in his underwear. He doesn't look like an NFL player, certainly the greatest of all time quarterback. And Peyton Manning didn't look like a gladiator either with his shirt off. So Mac Jones, people are really high on him. He can make all the throws. His completion percentage last year in college was just ridiculous, around 78%. And so he had a lot of guys to throw to. Certainly, he looked good behind that offensive line at Alabama. But Mac Jones has rocketed up the board, whereas Justin Fields, you're exactly right, has dropped down a few pegs in terms of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and looking forward now, going into the summer, of course, the draft is coming up, but also the summer, always very, very important for teams. Indianapolis, no different from that. A lot of new faces, introducing a new quarterback. When you do that, talk about the importance of that relationship, because that's just short of a new coach. That's about as big of a new personality that you can bring into the locker room.
It is, and that's why it's really fascinating, with the news coming out this week about the offseason and what it's going to look like. There was a lot of teams delivering messages this week through the NFLPA saying, hey, the pandemic's still ongoing, and depending on, where these teams are, where these players are geographically, they're saying, hey, it still makes sense for us to do most of the offseason virtual, considering we didn't have an offseason program last year. We still were able to get a season in, and it was still a very, the season it produced a lot of high level football. So there wasn't a lot of, things that you missed on the field on Sunday in the fall that you didn't get because of the spring being wiped out. So the NFLPA this past week has kind of modified their off-season schedule, and they want to implement sort of a hybrid look to it where the first couple of weeks are all virtual with the strength and conditioning stuff. The meetings are on the computer like they were last year. The biggest difference is towards the end of May and June, with OTAs and minicamp, that's going to be in person, but also a little bit of a hybrid where, all the meetings and all the classroom stuff, that's going to be done on Zoom, just like it was last year. So I'm not sure if the teams that had that raised their hand this week saying we don't want to do off-season workouts, if they're going to concede to the hybrid schedule that the NFL proposed just yesterday, actually. And for a team like the Colts, it's really big because I think it's really important that they get as much time on the field in the spring as possible with a new quarterback, like you talk about with Carson Wentz, and then 6 draft picks that are going to come in here and inevitably play a huge role for next season. So I think a team like the Colts, and I talked to Ron Jaworski this past offseason, right when the trade was made for Carson Wentz, and he said the pandemic and not having an offseason last year with Carson Wentz contributed to his down season. And so coming to a new scene, a new team, and not a brand new scheme with Frank Reich, because he knows it, having played with the Eagles, and Frank was the offensive coordinator there. It's not completely foreign to him, but I think as much time on the field as possible would really benefit this team to get a head start on next season, considering all the new components they're going to have, especially on offense with the skill spot. So that's going to be really fun to watch and see how this whole thing sort of plays out. The Colts haven't been a team that has publicly said we have trepidation about coming into the workout facility this offseason. So I think the Colts would really benefit from OTAs and take advantage of all of those minicamp practices that they are normally afforded.
I asked this question out of ignorance, Matt, because I don't know the answer. But with last season, no preseason, and you have been limited camp in the spring, summer, and then in the fall. Was there any benefit as far as injuries were concerned? Were there more injuries last season? Were there fewer injuries? And the reason I ask is because I'm curious to know if there were less injuries and or if that played a factor at all. Is that going to change the way the NFL and some of these teams move forward, not just from 2020, but for the foreseeable future?
No, that's a really good question, and I'm looking for the data because I saw it the other day. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me. I'm trying to okay, so I just pulled them up. It's funny, I saw this the other day, and this speaks to exactly what you're talking about. And the injury numbers were down quite significantly. So players last year, according to the NFL, experienced a 23% decrease in time missed because of injuries, a 30% reduction in concussions, and the lowest figures of ACL tears and lower extremity strains in 5 years, and a 45% decrease in heat-related illnesses. Again, that's all according to the NFL and the NFLPA. All of the improved figures stem from reduced on-field time during the offseason and training camp. Remember, training camp was reduced as well in the summer in July and August, and also practices were kind of tweaked this year as well because of COVID-19 protocols. So and that's I think those numbers are the biggest feathers in the cap for the players. Saying we can produce at a high level for you on Sundays in the fall when it really matters, because we're not getting injured as much because we don't have as much time and taxation on our bodies because of what we're normally used to in the spring. So I think staying healthy from COVID-19, staying safe, staying smart as far as that, but also just availability, which is so huge when you're talking about only 53 guys on a regular season roster. Those are huge numbers, and I think those are the biggest. That's the biggest leverage piece that the Players Association has when it comes to fighting for, not having to go through off-season stuff, because it's weird. I mean, the NFL is the only professional sports league that has off-season practices. And so the players are saying, we don't necessarily need to do this because we can play at a high level in the fall and stay healthy doing it.
Yeah, there's it's a different game at that level, and so they know what they need to do. But looking forward to this season, I'm excited because it's going to be a I can't say non-COVID season, but we're heading in better directions. I still am leery to say that we're going to be back to full capacity by the fall. But who knows? I mean, with the vaccinations going out, and I'm fully vaccinated, FYI. But it's got to be a good feeling. Summer outside, everybody's going to be outside. I just think it's going to be a good fall, and I'm very hopeful that it is going to be one of those where fans are back.
I'm very hopeful too, and I'm probably on the scale of incredibly optimistic that we are back to full strength in terms of full capacity at NFL stadiums. I agree exactly with what the Buffalo Bills are doing. They came out yesterday and said, we're going to have full stadium, but everybody that comes to the game has to prove they've been vaccinated. And that's the right way to go, if you ask me. And I still think you can pack 65,000 people at Lucas Oil Stadium that have been vaccinated. And so I think it'd be great. I really do. I think it'd be great to have these venues packed again. We've talked about it several times on this show. It was incredibly weird, incredibly awkward, incredibly unique not to have fans, at full capacity at Lucas Oil Stadium. I mean, it felt like a high school crowd. That's what it felt like. It felt like Fishers playing Hamilton Southeastern at Lucas Oil Stadium, so to get way more than 12,000 people in there is going to be awesome. I don't know if it's going to be full capacity, but I know there's going to be a lot more than there were last year, and that's a big step up.
More like Indiana versus Ball State from a couple of years ago.
Come on now. Hey, the chirp folks, they travel well now.
I'm just kidding. It wasn't them I was talking about. It was just not but that wouldn't be the same now. It would be different. But speaking of Indiana football, they continue to rise. You got a commitment from Dylan McCullough's second son. He's got another son that's a 23 class. He's the sixth in the nation, DB. Would turn out to be Indiana's highest recruit ever. Once his rivals ratings come out this summer, possibly could be in the top 100. I talked before. I've got this matrix that JB sent me. It shows the recruiting, and it goes back like 20 years. And you can see 20 years ago, Matt, the 80% of the recruiting for Indiana was 2 stars, average 2-star. And then you can just look at it, and you can see when they got their first 4-star, then they started getting some 4 stars. And you can also see the column of percentages, how it just continues to matriculate over. And now 80% or an entire class up recruiting wise. And it just continues to improve. And talent continues to improve coming in. They're also developing talent. Man, this is almost scary, the monster that this can become when you're having that kind of positivity in every single direction.
I'm curious, you're looking at that graph. When did it really start to rise exponentially? Like what year, what era, coaching era?
Daggone it. I've got to pull. I don't have it in front of me. I've got to pull it back up. That's a great question. Next time we do that, I will. But it was mind-boggling because you could just look at these columns. I'm like, right there, you can point it. If I could pull it up quickly, you could. I could just point right at it. But Kevin Wilson definitely, but he wasn't the 4 stars, I think. I think it was right before that. The 4 stars first started coming because they have not ever had a 5-star. And once they get that first 5-star, that's going to start that next wave over because you could see when they got that first 4-star and then they started getting 4 stars after that. They never not got one after getting the first one. that was critical. And so getting that first 5-star is huge. Not that it's the end all be all, because they're developing talent. They had 2 guys that were All-Americans last year that came here as a 2 and a 3-star. So that's not an issue. But, the Ohio States and all those guys, they're starting off with talent that's higher up. So you got to increase it as well. But doing a hell of a job.
Well, it's I've always said this about Indiana football. It's the chicken and the egg. You're not winning because you're not recruiting, and you're not recruiting at a high level because you're not winning. So it's just this circle. How do you break off on a tangent on this circle? And I give them a tremendous amount of credit because, what they did last year is what they've needed to do to get themselves off that circle. But that's only 1 year. It's not like they've done it, 5 years in a row. It's not like they have this sustained period of excellence where they're competing for Big Ten East championships and they're going to January bowl games. So the fact that they've been able to do that and recruit at the level that they have the last couple of years without the tremendous breakthrough wins. I know they got a couple last year, but it's only 1 year, but they're recruiting at a level where their recruiting success kind of out matches their on the field success. And that is a huge tip of the cap to their coaching staff, what they're building there, the foundation, the culture. It just speaks to what they're trying to implement and certainly what they're trying to capitalize off of that fantastic season they had in 2020.
Change of subject, not to get somber, but I'm sure you had opportunity to meet Slick Leonard, who passed away a couple of days ago. I know that's a different sport, but Indianapolis, he's a Mr. Indianapolis, Mr. Indiana. Did you have the opportunity to ever be around Slick much at all?
I did. And I appreciate you asking about that. And, he was without question one of the most important sports figures in the history of this market. I mean, you go with, I would put him in this order. I would say Slick Leonard, Reggie Miller, Peyton Manning. He was Indiana, man. He was Hoosier through and through, obviously playing down at IU. He's from Terre Haute, won a national championship with the Hoosiers, sinking that free throw that was famous back in the 50s, the Pacers winning the ABA championships, Pacers radio, which is primarily how I knew him growing up, listening to those, Pacer and Knicks games on the radio in the 90s. I mean, he arguably saved pro basketball along with his wife, Nancy. They had that Pacer telethon. He made so many memories at the Coliseum in the ABA days. And again, without the Pacers staying in town and making that transition to the NBA, there's no Hoosier Dome downtown. The Colts probably don't come to Indianapolis. There's no Super Bowl in 2012. There's no Lucas Oil Stadium. There's no Final Fours. There's no NCAA tournaments during a pandemic. I mean, he was the linchpin. He was kind of like that first domino, and it's not hyperbole. I mean, the guy is a legend, and I didn't know him well, but I worked with him a few times on Pacer broadcasts. I would fill in for a little bit, and I would book him on shows that I was producing back when I was first starting out. He was always incredibly kind to me. He treated me with a ton of respect. And I just sort of locked up. Like whenever I was around him, I just tried not to screw it up or make a fool of myself, because that's how much I, revered him and respected him. But he was incredibly nice to me, and that goes for everybody that came in contact with him.
Yeah, just one of the greats, man. Just one of the greats all time, man. And I figured that was the case, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that. What else is coming up for you this rest of this week?
Heavily involved in draft. So we got a ton of podcasts previewing the draft on Colts.com, and then we're going to have a live draft radio show on the weekend of the draft. First round coverage, second round coverage on the 29th and the 30th. So it is full steam ahead. The Colts only have 6 draft picks, so it's really, really important that they hit on some of the premium positions of need, like offensive tackle, defensive end, because for the most part, the Colts have steered clear of big splashes in free agency.
Did you know that in the history of professional sports draft, the only draft pick ever made of a fake person was done by Slick Leonard?
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
I I'm trying to see. It may have been. I can't remember if it was when they first got to the NBA or at the end of the ABA, but I think this was an ABA, and there was a ton of rounds. There was like 12 or 15 rounds, and they were just done. They said we're sick and done, and they had a last pick, so they made up a player. They made up a player that was named Slick Pinkham, and the coach of the Pacers back then was Dick Blinkham or something. That they just crossed names and put that in as a draft pick. And to this day, apparently, that is the only official draft pick ever made by a pro team in a pro draft of a fake person. Slick Leonard.
I need to know. So is this the ABA days or the NBA days?
I think this is ABA now that I think about it. I just read this somewhere the other day. I think this is ABA. It was toward the end of the ABA when.
So the only other coach of the Pacers in the ABA days from 1967 to 1968 was a guy named Larry Staverman, and he was kind of mediocre. His regular season record was 40-47. Then obviously. Slick took over for the remainder of the ABA duration and won three ABA championships. So I would love to know what course of time that pick happened. That's fascinating. I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, it's funny. The stuff you learn, it's just I love it. I love hearing those old stories. Those are just great little nuggets. That may have come from Denari, but Chris will be on with us a little bit. I'll ask him about that, but I can't remember where I found that. But if I see it, I'll send it to you as well.
Please do.
Buddy, I cannot thank you enough. Appreciate you as always.
All right, guys. Be good.
You have a great one, brother. We'll talk at you soon.
All right. See ya.
Thank you, sir. Matt Taylor joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat, as always, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, that's a great little nugget, man. I don't know if he also knew that he turned down the IU job before Bob Knight. It's just crazy. Wow. It's just there's so many silly stories out there, man. It's wild. We got more to talk about them, too, when we come back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios right after this.
Welcome to your
What do you guys got going on for Saturday tradition? Nothing?
Spring stuff. I'm working on a story about Indiana.
Yeah. Do tell.
Just that they're going to be they're taking that next step to being the next contender in the Big Ten East.
I could have been a contender. I could have been a somebody.
And we'll probably
anybody that's listening on
YouTube
right now, if you can tell me where that's from within 30 seconds, you win a visor.
30 seconds.
Hey, man, you can't Google that shit anymore.
That's true.
You either know it or you don't.
That's true. Good point.
You either know it or you don't, baby. I got to look down here, too. You got 30 seconds. Be at the bottom. How's everybody doing out there today? Guys that listen to us on YouTube, spread the word for us if you wouldn't mind. Man, want to get to 1,000.
What are you up to?
850 something.
Oh, knocking on the door.
Since January, not bad.
I haven't been doing much planned content because of basketball season, but now that spring's in full gear and I have one sport focus, I can actually start writing stuff.
Dude, it's last weekend was awesome because I was just not on edge the whole time.
Yep.
But it was still where I was waiting to be on edge the whole time. I was waiting for something to happen.
You were on edge of being on edge.
Yes, I'm not kidding though. Now I'm like, okay.
Now you're good.
Now I'm like, oh, they got some players to bring in, but I'm not stressing over that crap anymore. I'm like,
all right, we're back at about 20.
that's perfect.
Honda
See,
Civic
that's
LX
perfect.
front-wheel drive lease for just
That's what I'm
$180 a month,
saying.
or a
When
new
I'm back to
2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle with you. So is Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. You know, when we had met with Dane the other day on a Zoom deal, and I didn't realize it, but he's right. This does. I wear a visor every day. This can look like one of those visors with hats with hair things.
Oh,
You know? That's what he said. He goes, "Whoa!" He said, "Hey, what you got? One of those visors with hair on?" I was like, "Man, that's a great idea. So I should have some of those made. That is a great idea. Have just with these and the red hair on it.
Yep.
There you go. I don't think anyone got that. We were in the break, and I threw out a quote. Oh, raging!
somebody get the visor.
When did he? Tim hit it up 9:49. Ooh, it wasn't in 30 seconds, but it was 9:48 on the waterfront. That is correct, Tim. I'm going to throw him up there. Yep, and it was Marlon Brando. You all didn't hear us.
That's from On the Waterfront.
Yes,
Wow, I've actually seen that movie and I didn't know that.
man, could have had a visor. All right, could have had it. Mr. Denari will join us in the next segment. Pacers lost last night. Good morning, Jennifer, down in Evansville. I mean, no, they won. They lost the game before that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but last night, a nice win. Man, they have been scoring points. Scoring the points gone up. Tim was not sure about the Yasir Roseman hire. Why? Kenneth says he also knows the Pacific Northwest in addition to the South that I talked about. And here's the thing, though. Indiana's recruiting is going to be fine. In my opinion, coach needs to find a good quality big. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, too. The recruiting's right here. You don't have to go very far at all. You don't have to leave the state for a core, but you don't have to go far out right outside of that. Logan Duncombe from Cincinnati, kids from Illinois, Ohio. That's the old Bob Knight model. But that's all you need in addition to some drop-ins.
Right.
You look back at all these 87. Joe Hillman is from California. Keith Smart and Dean Garrett were JUCO transfers. So Charlie Miller, it's just you got to bring in. There's talent everywhere, and to be elite, you have to have the most elite talent you can have.
Right.
So but I think that's not going to be an issue. You've got recruiting covered, and you've got guys who are good at it. I mean, I saw a statement somewhere that says, this could make Hunter the weakest link in recruiting. Well, if that's the case, that's tremendous.
Yeah.
Because he is anything but a weak link. Needs as far as going, a big man would be good, but I think I'm telling you, Logan Duncombe, I think is going to be a good one. I really, really do. Met a new friend the other day who I'm about to find a way to reference him. Just gonna call him Joe. Joe. Knows his state and the basketball like nobody's business. Just looking forward to it being a basketball place again, not only,
right,
but also because it's a lot more fun when the greats of the whatever sport it is. If it's hockey, you wanted to see Michael Gretzky. You wanted to see how the hell did that ever come out? You want to see the Gretzkys, Wayne Gretzky. You want to see the greats. People want to see LeBrons. They want to see the Reggie Millers, the Peyton Mannings. They want to see Indianapolis against New England. They want those games. They want Indiana and Kentucky. They want Duke and North Carolina. These teams need to be good. You can hate Kentucky. You can hate Kansas, but it's good for college basketball for them to be good.
Right.
It's the same for Indiana. Indiana is the biggest basketball state in this country. It is truly the only state that is built from the grassroots up. Kentucky is not. I don't give a crap what they talk about. That's why they get their ass beat in the All-Star game 3-1 since the dawn of time every year. It just should be that way. But I'm looking forward to it. But not only that, this has never been – Indiana has never been a full-on athletics place like, say, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah.
They've just had bigger success in athletics across the board. Indiana's a smaller school, a much smaller school. So it's harder, but they are on pace right now to be at that point this fall. I mean, I've talked about it over and over with men's basketball being the final little, I shouldn't say little because it's the linchpin, but when you pull your linchpin up around the other four major sports that are already having success, that is monstrous for the university. You talk about donations. That's how you spur growth. Indiana has the small, if not the smallest stadium in the Big Ten. It's got to be next to it. Hell, it was one of the smallest after they built it. Yeah, that was in 1960. So this press box that they have, that's horrific. I haven't been to Rutgers, but it's got to be the worst. Other than, I won't count them in Maryland. Other than that, worst press box in the Big Ten because it's from 1960. No suites. This will allow them to do that. That's got to happen. They've got to get suites in there. They've got to grow because whether or not you like it or not, football is where the money is for athletics programs. And it would be a bigger moneymaker than basketball, even in Indiana, if they maintain that level that they're looking at. And I think that they can. And with Tom Allen, I think they will.
There's no reason they can't when you look at the recruiting. Now, I'm not saying that they can be Ohio State. I think they can be a miniature version of Ohio State. When you look at the success that they've had in these other sports, in football, you hope that men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, soccer. I mean, this is a well-rounded athletic department, and you got to keep that momentum going. And I think Indiana football is I don't know the best word to describe it because obviously Indiana basketball is always going to be the premier sport for the university, but football is kind of what can bring this whole thing together. That can be what takes this athletic department to the next level. Because you're right, you can get those suites, you can revamp your press box, you can get more fans involved, and the important thing is, Jim, is the people who are at our age, they've made up their mind as to whether or not they're going to be Indiana football fans. What you have to do now to grow your product, to grow the brand, is you have to be good, because there are kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old. If they grow up with Indiana being a good football school, that's a whole generation of new fans. That'll help sell out. I mean, we're looking 20, 30 years down the road, obviously, but that's what it takes. It's not going to be a snap the fingers and then all of a sudden Indiana's going to be one of the best athletic departments in the country. It takes time, but you've had generations of people who've grown up with Indiana being the worst or the losingest football program in college football history. There's not a lot of appeal to cheer for them. And so when you change that, you're going to have a whole new generation of players who want to go to Indiana, who grew up being fans of Indiana. And that helps with recruiting. That helps with attendance. You know, people want to go to Ohio State or Michigan because of football. There's a percentage. This was a study done, I think, maybe in 2010. Students choose based on football programs where they want to go to school. So, and I'm sure Indiana's that way with basketball, but Indiana,
well, it used to be. Really it used to be when they were. That's
yeah, but
the thing. When the basketball was driving it, they were able to get away with it. And then when basketball was no longer driving it and you don't have the football, that was a problem. Fortunately, I think it's beneficial for them. We got to hit a break for football to have this rise while basketball was struggling because they didn't have to fight for as much attention.
Yep.
And it has given them a little more attention than they would have gotten and allowed them to maybe go into the next season with some steam and some momentum that once they hit that, I think that they're not going to need it. They'll have it on their own by then, and they can prove that. But looking forward to it. But it could be an entire new day for IU athletics, and I mean across the board, and I mean that. But we got to hit a break. Up next, Chris Denari is going to join us. We'll talk some Pacers and more IU basketball with him as we do always, and we'll be back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Any More Honda right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or you. Hello, Mr. Denari.
Hey guys, how are you?
Fine, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
My condolences.
Yeah, that was. We all knew it was, going to happen at some point. And
Well, those you can't. He's. Oh my God, That's one of those. Those regrets you have. I don't have any regrets. I'm like, I just one of those people. I do stuff I don't like. I don't ever want to look back. God, he's a regret that I'll always have. I did not get the opportunity to meet him, and it's bothered. It's because I've been thinking even before he passed. I was like, God dang it, I would love to talk to him because I started to learn more and more about him. The more I learned about him, the more I fell in love with his story and who he was. I'm like, oh my God. And it's so funny how he is so important to IU, but you don't think of that connection much
right
with IU. And I know why. At least I think I know why, but it should be as big a connection to IU, maybe not as to the Pacers because he did so much, but it should be a bigger connection to IU than what it is. But I think that comes down to Bob Knight and the timing of them emerging and
right. Yeah.
And he turned down the IU job.
I think, I can't remember what was I met him. My dad went to college with him.
Yeah, I saw a picture the other day. Oh man, I was like, and your dad, oh my God, you and your dad. I was like, Jesus, you can't tell that, can you?
Yeah, I can't tell I didn't fall from the tree.
Man.
So I knew Slick. In fact, the very first I did my first Pacers game in 2000. I filled in for Mark Boyle on radio. I'd been hired to do the Fever, and Al Albert's mom or dad passed away. They moved Boyle to TV, and they called me at like 10 a.m. on the final day of the regular season in 2000 and said, "Hey, can you do the game tonight?" And I was like, "What?" And so that's the only game I ever did with Slick. And I had to pause. I was doing Butler basketball at the time, and I remember thinking every time there's a made three, you got to pause. You got to pause so you can say "boom, baby."
Hey, sorry, we're coming back. Don't mean to interrupt.
This world-class golfing, and a premier resort experience that is waiting for you on your next visit to French Lick, West Baden.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sillersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Brought to you by Any More Honda. Jim Coyle, Dustin Schutte, joined by the great Chris Denari. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you on this Thursday morning?
Hey, a lot better, I'm sure, as you are. Big win last night by the Pacers. They were coming off of a loss in the middle of the night that I thought that they were going to get at home, but didn't happen. But bounced back, scored a lot of points, man.
Yeah. 4 of the last 7 games, they've scored at least 132. If you look across the NBA, there's been a lot of points scored. And, part of it, I think, is the schedule's so compressed. There's not a lot of practice time. Is the focus on defense, what it should be? I don't know. But the Pacers have been humming along offensively, and that's been good because, at times they've gotten a little stagnant. They really have developed here, especially the last couple of games, seeing the big three scores, Sabonis, Brogdon, and LeVert all over 20 points. They did it shorthanded last night. No Miles Turner for a fifth straight game. Doug McDermott had sprained an ankle. So, even though Houston isn't a good team by record, they had beaten Dallas a week ago, and Dallas is a playoff team. So all of these teams, we've talked about it before, no matter what their record is, they've got really good players. And you just have to be on top of your game on that particular night to make sure you don't stub your toe.
Chris, 4 out of 5 now for the Pacers. And when Miles Turner went down, I think, the Pacers fan in me thought, boy, this can get out of hand really quickly when you're trying to vie for a playoff spot. But two guys I think have stepped up really well. And I don't want to say the injury, is a good thing, obviously, but guys who have taken advantage of their opportunity. I think Edmund Sumner and Gogo Batadze have really improved. I like the way Edmund is attacking the basket. I think Goga, I read a tweet, I laughed the other day, he's the best, worst three-point shooter maybe in Pacers history. But I think that their development has been so good. And it's been a pleasure to watch those guys develop throughout the course of the season.
There's no question, Dustin, that, you've got to have depth. And those two a little bit have been forced into roles, and that's good. And then they've responded. Batadze has played very well. He had 4 block shots the other night. You're right. His shot, every time he shoots it the three, he has great form. It always looks like it's going to go in. Now, he has shot it better here of late. I think early on he was like 18%, and I think he's doubled that right now. He's the last 10, 12 games, he's around 35, 36%, which you'll take. I mean, that's an adequate three-point shooter, if not a better than adequate three-point shooter. And I think the Edmund Sumner role has been important because the Pacers aren't an overly athletic team. And you need to have somebody that can just motor down the floor, can just take the ball from the perimeter and get to the basket. Brogdon and LeVert can do that, but they do that at a little different speed. Sumner is one of those guys that can just blast to the basket. And I think for people that watched last night, John Wall is one of those guys. He's really, I think, regained a lot of his athleticism from the multiple injuries he's had. But he still does a really good job of putting his head down and just getting to the rim. And that's something that we've seen Edmund Sumner do here the last month.
I mean, they've won 5 out of their last 7, it looks like. So you pointed out, Schutte. So, but they can get on that roll, and it's been a long season. I mean, they've been going at this since December with the COVID protocols, and in this last stretch. You've got a West Coast swing in there. It looks like what do they have to do in this last, whatever? It's not even a quarter. It's last little run of the season they game back. They got to get them some breathing room and get up into that A spot.
Yeah. And here's the thing: is you really like to get into 6 because remember 7, 9, and 10 are going to be in a play-in. Sort of a one and done situation. So if you're 7 through 10. You're in the postseason, but you're not in the postseason. You've got to work your way into the postseason. I think the one thing that's been interesting when you look at the schedule, we've talked about this the last month or so that I've been on the show, is because of March Madness, because of the NCAA tournament, they were forced to go on the road a lot. And when Sunday comes and they finish this road trip in Atlanta, they will have played 18 of their last 26 games on the road. Now, their record on the road is as good as anybody in the East. They're 17-12. But you wonder, how does that affect you when you get home? And maybe that's an issue why they're not as good at home. You get home, a number of these players have wives, they have kids, they have families. And now all of a sudden you get home and you want to decompress, but your kids want to play. Your wife wants you, your wife just leaves. Hey, I know that from traveling. When I had little kids back in the day, I'd be on the road, and my wife, I'd walk in the door with my suitcase, and she goes, "Hey, you got it now. I'm out of here for a while." So all of those things, these guys are human beings. This is not Xbox. It's not PlayStation. So, this has been a long stretch. I would have been a part of that stretch on the road, but because of, as you said, Jim, the COVID protocol, none of the announcers have traveled this year. So I just think once they get home, Monday starts the final stretch of the season, 11 of the last 16 at home, and hopefully they can turn around that home record. And who knows, if you win 4 or 5 in a row, you might be 5th or 6th in the East.
Yep, and we'll look forward to seeing how that goes next. They don't play again, till Friday, looks like?
Yeah.
Or tomorrow.
Tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon, in fact. It is a
on the road. Wow.
It's a 3:00 game at Utah. And part of the reason that's an afternoon game, so we'll have the pregame show at 2:30, tip at 3 on Valley Sports, is Utah is in the first of a back-to-back. They're playing a nationally televised game on Saturday at Staples Center against LA at 4:30 Eastern and 1:30 Pacific. So there's no way that they could play that game on Friday night. The other reason they are doing this is all about how the NBA sets up the schedule for Europe. And so the game tomorrow, since it's a 1:00 Salt Lake start, 3:00 East, I believe it's like an 8 or 9 o'clock start in prime time over in Italy and London and Germany. So the NBA will do this on occasion so that the fans in Europe aren't watching it at like 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning. So that's why the odd start time on a Friday afternoon.
I'm sure no complaints from you.
No, I mean, hey, I've got Friday night. Already have dinner plans with my wife and I and our son and daughter-in-law. So yeah, I'm not unhappy about a 3:00 start tomorrow.
Perfect. Before we get off, I've got to ask you about Slick Leonard. We haven't talked to you since we lost him a couple days ago, and we were talking in the break that I don't have a lot of regrets of people, but man, that is going to always loom as one that I did not get the opportunity to meet and talk with him. And boy, because the more I learned about him, the more I just fell in love with that dude and who he was. I cannot imagine being one of the lucky ones that had the opportunity to be around him, work with him, and share his experience.
Yeah, I was very fortunate from the standpoint that my dad and mom both went to IU. That's where they met in Bloomington. And my dad met Slick back in the 50s. And so when we moved to Westfield, just north of Carmel, in 1977, my dad went to visit Slick because we were back in central Indiana. And so, 40 plus years ago, I had a chance to meet him. Would see him throughout the years on the golf course and those types of things. And then, having a chance to work with him, travel with him for all those years. There's no question that all of us affiliated with Pacer Sports and Entertainment, we would not have jobs if it wasn't for what Slick and Nancy did back in 1977 with the telethon that saved the franchise. And guys, I think, I don't think we have Market Square Arena. We don't have the RCA Dome. We don't have Lucas Oil Stadium. We don't have the Colts. We don't have the Pan American Games without saving the Pacers franchise in 1977. So you can really walk it back and know that Slick and Nancy Leonard are as important to this city and state as anybody who has ever been. And, I thought our radio broadcast the other night, they did a wonderful job in the pregame, and we tried to, do that as well yesterday. We had to focus on a game, but we also wanted to pay tribute to just an outstanding person. And it's a big loss, and but Slick would want us to move forward, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, we played the clip. It's a little over a minute from, I think it was his Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame induction. The last minute where he talks about it being just a love affair and that he wished it could go on forever, but he knew it didn't. But he was just a realist, I guess is the best thing you could say. He was just a realist and faced everything. If you look back and read his history, he just faced life realistically, I think is the best way you can look at it. And by doing that, he just kept matriculating forward, to use a Hank Stram reference.
Well, and everybody, Jim and Dustin, what I like to say about him is anybody was everybody. He treated everybody the same. Fans, players, in how he approached them, his friendliness. He didn't know a stranger. I mean, that was the great thing about Slick. And so he was bigger than life. And that's why, you know, some of us thought he would live forever. And as he said, it comes to an end at some point. He had an amazing life, 88 years that he was able to, impact us on this earth. So definitely we'll miss him. And, just my thoughts and prayers and everybody for Nancy and the Leonard family.
And one of the things I always said, and Jim, I think you can relate, is we didn't know him, but it felt like we knew him. He felt like part of the family. He felt, you listen to a radio broadcaster when he was on the radio, talking about the Pacers, he seemed familiar. And you just felt like when he was in your home or on your radio, you just felt like you knew him, even those of us who didn't.
Yeah, no question, Dustin.
Yeah, it just, always it'll always resonate. Boom, baby. It just resonates. And he just had, the thing is though, you could hear his joy when he was saying those two words. Yeah. It was the joy that was behind. I mean, how does that not, I don't care what you're doing, where you are, how does that not make you smile?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just natural. And the fact that he came from where he came from to be the person that he was and to have all of that, that's what is amazing to me. He came from nothing and had everything to give and just kept giving right to the end.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And, I can't tell you all the stories we listened to on the back of the bus at 2 a.m, going from the arena to the airport, from the airport to the hotel. That was the treat with all the other things he was responsible for. Just being on the back of the bus and listening to some of Slick's stories, those were some great moments.
There is nothing, and I mean nothing better than any person of that stature's old stories. Yeah. I'm not kidding. I would, for hours and hours at a time, whoever it is. John Leskowski is a guy like that I'd love to talk to. I met an older guy. I met a guy that he talks to the other day. So what does that tell you? It's an older guy to him. So yeah, it's fascinating. And and I'm glad that you got a chance to be around. I'm glad your dad and those great stories. It's just awesome. But that's why your broadcasts, I think, are why they are so great. All this stuff that comes into what you've been able to experience. So thank you for all that you bring to us.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dustin. And we'll talk next week.
You bet. Have a good one, Chris. Thank you so much.
All right.
Back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat right after this. Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new man, yeah, that bothers me. Just got so busy, and then COVID, because he was somebody I'm like, all right, I want to get him on, but damn. That one bothers me. It'll always bother me.
But Chris was right. He's one of those guys that you think is going to live forever.
Well, read about his health. Hell, he should have died like 3 times, I think.
I know. What was his first heart attack or stroke was in
2011.
Yeah.
Hell, he did die. They had to bring him back.
But I mean, and he continued to do the broadcast for 10 more years.
Okay, we got to talk some Indiana basketball. Lots of comments. There you go, Rinko. There you go. Rinko has a son.
Rinko?
Ivan Rinko is what he's talking about there. I got the reference. See, I'm on it. Let's see. I got to go back to a starting point. There's a good spot. I struggle to see where we can realistically have minutes. Yeah. Man, they don't like it when we don't talk about IU basketball, Dustin.
Which is too bad. I could talk for shows about Pacers basketball.
Do they do the same thing during football season? Do they expect Indiana basketball coverage year-round?
Well,
Even
we
if
do
it's
have
football season?
There is basketball coverage year-round.
Well, obviously there's coverage year-round, but I mean, like the primary
coverage
in the fall is football season is what I'm saying, in my opinion.
Until
I know Indiana's different.
Yes, Indiana's different. It does not. There is no basketball season. What is this season thing you talk about? Oh, you mean when they play the games?
When the schedule comes out.
Oh yeah. You mean when they restart the season?
Yes.
Now I'm confused. What do you? All right, whatever.
It doesn't. It never ends. It never ends.
Yeah.
That's just the restarting point.
I gotcha.
There's. I was going to say. Oh, I'll shut up.
Someone. Connect with your friends. Stay in touch with your community. And know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Welcome back to the Golf Club Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. Dustin Schutte sitting in as he always does. Jim Coyle with you. Just finished up with Chris Denari. Indiana's got a couple spots to fill. Kenneth says he struggles to see where they can realistically have minutes to offer someone that's not a top-level player at their position. You never know. But I understand that. Everything seems kind of filled. But that wing spot, I still have my Jerome Hunter, slasher, a guy that can shoot consistently from out there. I know they want to make some of these guys do that, but I don't know is the answer. I saw another question. Let's see. Michigan, Jeff says Michigan is going to be sick next year. Yeah, they're going to be good. Big Ten season seems like a stretch. Big Ten title. Yeah, that's way out of question. All that's talking about the
Hold on. I don't know that it's out of question. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm not.
No. I said it's about the other question. What this is about is about the new assistant coach that was hired, who had been mentioned in the FBI deal. Didn't receive anything. He was not considered to be a player by the money men back then, and wasn't offered any money and wasn't offered anything. So he didn't. I don't know that he knew where he was. I don't. Obviously, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. So, Sid asked, "Do you think they will fill the two remaining spots?" Which is kind of, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't think so. I think that they have to leave. Not have to. I think they will leave one open at the minimum. I think they have to. I said this yesterday. They have to get in and see what they have. What they have, what they think they have, and what Archie Miller thought they have. Two different things. I assure you. So they have to, which they've probably been doing, evaluate the talent, evaluate who's what do they really need, what do they need now. They have to make those determinations. Never have too much guard play, shooting. Never have too much of that. But they could I'd like to see a wing and another big guy. And
you don't know what's going to happen through the course of a season. I mean, you could have a guy get injured, and you need to do something.
I would only look for last year eligible players. Someone like Coleman Lands would be a good pick. Yeah. Again, the recruiting is going to change too with this portal. We've heard the mid-major coaches, they recruit the portal now. So let's see any other Yasser, but Yasser was talked about that. It was cleared. Any more questions? Tony says, I think as long as they can shoot and add spacing to the floor, any addition would be good. Yeah, they've got to go out and they're not going to recruit, like Dana's not going to be recruiting any of the guys that he was talking to at Michigan State. That's just a professional courtesy. It's not going to happen. Unless he was an Indiana kid, maybe that's something different. But but they have to get in and devise their recruiting plan. They just got guys in place. They just got the guys put in positions. They're kind of behind, but they secured most of the team by getting everybody back. So what they add now, I think, and what they can do development-wise to what they already have is going to determine I think they're already an NCAA team, personally. So I don't think that's going to be an issue next year. I don't think they're going to be they're not going to be a team that is battling for the Big Ten title. I mean, they're not, I don't think that they can catch up to Michigan that fast, but I don't think it's that far away. I don't think it's that couldn't happen in 2 years.
I think they can, because I think that, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win, but I don't think it's out of the question. I'll put it that. I think they have the talent. They're going to have a staff that can develop that talent. And you look at the Big Ten, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough league. This, again, 5-6 losses may win the conference next season. So we've seen Indiana have flashes against teams in the past under Archie Miller. So now you get a more consistent, you have good players returning, and you get a coaching staff that knows how to develop talent and can game plan. I wouldn't put money on them to win, but I wouldn't rule it out. I think they'll be right in the mix, or should be in the mix.
Well, we'll certainly get the chance to find out. I'm looking forward to that. Let's see. Tony says, we do not need plotting, lane clogging big man. Does not sound like what Woodson is planning on. When I say big man, I mean one like Logan Duncombe. Logan Duncombe is a new style big man. He likes to get in there and mix it up, but will step out on you as well. But I love what Logan Duncombe brings to this team. I really do. Like a Franz Wagner out of Michigan. Yeah, I think he can really become. He has not been asked to do that much yet, but he's going to as he progresses in his career. I think you're going to need to. Let's see what we got next. I didn't hit the next. Okay, just trying to hit up some of these questions are hitting us. Kenneth says Jeff Ormsby Trace is not going to play the 4 in the NBA without a 3-point shot, and that is going to take a year more to develop. But he can develop mid-range jumper and add space. Yeah, he has to do that stuff and ASAP. Because if this is going to be his last year before the NBA, he has got to add that. It should have been already worked. You should have been seeing it, but it must have been a point to where he was not at all comfortable showing that. Jeff, thank you, sir. Got a new listener. Great show, guys. Knowledgeable, relevant. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you wherever you're from. We're looking forward to. We got to get off. Normally we'd stay on for an overtime period, but I'm going to have to jump off today right on time. We have another press conference to get on with Kenya Hunter today. So we would do that. Normally we would hit all these questions in the overtime period, Jeff. So you'll know we'll be back tomorrow to do that, and we'll have Verdell on with us, Alec Lasley, and we'll see. I think. Oh man, get somebody special guest tomorrow too. Well, I forgot, but it's a good one. Because I got too many things going on in my head.
We know it's good.
Gosh darn it. It's driving me nuts now, too. Daggone. It's a former player. But there you go. Donald, 1971 ABA draft. Slick Pinkham. There you go.
There you go.
Slick Pinkham. What a way to end the show. That's there you go. Donald, you get a visor, man, when I get them in. Remind me, Donald. You're going to remind me. But I was reading that yesterday. That was just the only made up draft pick in the history of pro sports. Now, Bob Knight had his Ivan Renko draft deal that he created, but that was not nearly as distinguished as an actual draft pick. There's that. Mike says everywhere else is just a game, and Indiana it's life. That's right. Jeremy jumped on and says, I think we have held those. They would have held those 2 scholarships if Brunk stayed, but now they need another big. Very possible. Like I said, I agree with that. I think that they're going to a very versatile big. There you go. someone like Logan Duncan. But I agree with that. And add another still shooting. You just cannot have enough shooting. Shooting is a great killer. I mean, if you got guys that can shoot, you got people. You have scared defenses because they have to protect the perimeter at all cost. And when they're having to extinguish that much energy on the perimeter, now you've opened the middle wide open and you're exposing. And that's what this team has not had at all under Archie Miller.
And you look at what Michigan did last season, getting to the Elite Eight, even without Isaiah Livers. I mean, that's because they had great shooting at so many different positions. If they don't have that, they're done in the second round.
I'm still driving me nuts that I can't remember who's coming on tomorrow because I'm got too many things going on in my head at the same time. But daggone it, it was actually I think it's Mitchell Page.
Oh, Mitchell
Page. There we go. So big thanks to everybody. Of course, another fun day as always. We'll be back tomorrow to do it again with Verdell, Alec Lasley, and Mitchell Page is going to join us tomorrow. We got to jump off a little earlier for a pro conference. So for Dustin, I'm Jim Coyle. Go out and do something nice for everybody. Wear your mask. And until tomorrow, have a great day.